Maya Javanika Channam. Maya Javanika Channam. Agnadokshajam Avyayam. Agnadokshajam Avyayam. Nalakshase Mhudadrisha. Nalakshase Mudhadrisha. Nato Natyadharo Yata. Nato Natyadharo Yatha. Maya Javanika Channam. Agnadokshajam Avyayam. Nalakshase Mudadrisha. Nata Natyodaro Yatha. Maya Javanika Channam. Agnadokshajam Avyayam. Nalakshase Mudadrisha. Nato Natyadharo Yata. Maya Javanika Channam. Agnadokshajam Avyayam. Nalakshase Mudadrisha. Nato Natyadharo Yata. Maya Javanika Channam. Agnadokshajam Avyayam. Nalakshase Mudadrisha. Nato Natyadaro Yata. Word to word translation. Maya, deluding. Javanika, curtain. Achannam, covered by. Agna, ignorant. Adokshajam, beyond the range of material conception. Transcendental. Avyayam, irreproachable. Na, not. Lakshyase, observed. Muhudadrisha, by the foolish observer. Nataha, an artist. Natyadaraha, dressed as a player. Yatha, as. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are the eternally irreproachable factor covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna affirms that less intelligent persons mistake him to be an ordinary man like us, and thus they deride him. The same is confirmed herein by Queen Kunti. The less intelligent persons are those who rebel against the authority of the Lord. Such persons are known as asuras. The asuras cannot recognize the Lord's authority. When the Lord Himself appears amongst us as Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, or in His original form as Krishna, He performs many wonderful acts which are humanly impossible. As we shall find in the 10th canto of this great literature, Lord Sri Krishna exhibited His humanly impossible activities even from the days of His lying on the lap of His mother. He killed the Putana witch, although she smeared her breast with poison just to kill the Lord. The Lord sucked her breast just like a natural baby, and He sucked out her very life also. Similarly, He lifted the Govardhan hill, just as a boy picks up a frog's umbrella and stood several days continuously just to give protection to the residents of Vrindavana. These are some of the superhuman activities of the Lord described in the authoritative Vedic literatures like the Puranas, Itihasas, histories, and Upanishads. He has delivered wonderful instructions in the shape of Bhagavad Gita. He has shown marvelous capacities as a hero, as a householder, as a teacher, and as a renouncer. He is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by such authoritative personalities as Vyasa, Devala, Asita, Narada, Madhva, Shankara, Ramanuja, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jiva Goswami, Vishwanatha Chakravarti, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and all other authorities of the line. He himself has declared as much in many places of the authentic literatures. And yet, there is a class of men with demoniac mentality who are always reluctant to accept the Lord as the supreme absolute truth. This is particularly due to their poor fund of knowledge, and partially due to their stubborn obstinacy, which results from various misdeeds in the past and present. Such persons could not recognize Lord Sri Krishna even when he was present before them. Another difficulty is that those who depend more on their imperfect senses cannot realize him as a Supreme Lord. Such persons are like the modern scientist. They want to know everything by their experimental knowledge. But it is not possible to know the Supreme Person by imperfect experimental knowledge. He is described herein as Adokshaja, or beyond the range of experimental knowledge. All our senses are imperfect. We claim to observe everything and anything, but we must admit that we can observe things under certain material conditions only, which are beyond our control. The Lord is beyond the observation of sense perception. Queen Kunti accepts this deficiency of the conditioned soul, especially of the woman class who are less intelligent. For less intelligent men, there must be such things as temples, mosques, or churches, so that they may begin to recognize the authority of the Lord and hear about him from authorities in such holy places. For less intelligent men, this beginning of spiritual life is essential, and only foolish men decry the establishment of such places of worship, which are required to raise the standard of spiritual attributes for the mass of people. For less intelligent persons, bowing down before the authority of the Lord as generally done in the temples, mosques, or churches, is as beneficial as it is for the advanced devotees to meditate upon him by active service. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyat Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gauravaktaruddha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are the eternally irreproachable factor covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. This is a very famous verse of the Bhagavatam, part of Queen Kunti's prayers. Srila Prabhupada used to refer to them many times. And Queen Kunti is talking about some really important aspects about understanding Krishna. So, here there is a discussion of how the Lord is not visible to our limited sense perception. So, example is given. If there's a drama going on, right, and somebody is wearing a makeup as a particular actor, right? You dressing up as somebody. If the makeup is done really well, you can't really make out who the original person is, right? It's difficult to find out who is this person based on the height and this and that. Or maybe this is this person, maybe it is that person. But if it's done really well, you can never make out who the person is. Similarly, the Lord cannot be recognized even though He's right in front of you. Yeah? It's not that He's somewhere else, He's right there in front of you, but you cannot. Like the deities are right there, Krishna Balaram was standing right there. But many of us fail to recognize and understand that it is Krishna Balaram. Right? The Supreme Lord Himself, because He's covered by the curtain of deluding energy. There is a curtain that covers our vision. And we cannot see the Lord. So in the Shastras we talk about how there are different perceptions, right? You're able to gather information directly through our senses. And what is that called? Information gathering through our senses. Pratyaksha. And then when you gather information by making some inductions based on what you observe, what is that called? Anumana pramana. Right? Now, this is how we try to gather information in this world. All the information that we know, everything that we think we know, our views of the world, how we act, and everything is based on this. First, we try to gather information through our senses, pratyaksha pramana. But the problem is that our senses, the Prabhupada actually talks about there are 4 defects for a conditioned soul. Right? Any conditioned soul has 4 defects. The first defect is imperfect senses. Right? Though we are so proud of our senses, but they are actually imperfect. And we ourselves know. Right? Now we cannot see beyond this wall because light cannot pass through opaque objects. I cannot see behind this wall. There actually might be somebody right behind it and I cannot see. Right? So there is only a particular wavelength in which we see. There is only a particular way we are able to. There is only a particular wavelength we can hear. Right? It's been shown through many instances. Like animals have better perception in certain situations. Like when they have these tsunamis, right? Huge tsunamis are happening. A few minutes before the tsunami hits, suddenly all the animals start disappearing from there. They start running and the birds are flying and this thing and the human beings are like, what is happening? And before they know, the huge wall of water hits them. It's been shown multiple times in multiple scenarios. Because animals can actually Some of them can actually hear in a different frequencies, like even dogs for that matter. They can hear frequencies that human beings cannot hear. In fact, very high-pitched sounds, they're very hurtful to the dogs, and some of the sounds we cannot even perceive. So our senses are quite limited in terms of what they can actually do. And then there's the other veins of acquiring knowledge, which is anumana pramana, where we say that, well, I really cannot directly perceive it, but I perceive something. Let's say you hear something going on. You hear some loud sound coming from the kitchen, and then you'll say, oh, this sound, in the past I've seen a vessel falling down making this kind of a sound. It's like a cup with water falling down, it makes a certain sound. And say, oh yeah, I think somebody just must have, put a cup down. And that's what it is. Right? You start making some assumptions and gathering information through inductive knowledge, anumana. And even there, Srila Prabhupada talks about how our defects of our conditioned life come in the way of that perception. Right? What are the problems with inductive knowledge? Some examples? Huh? Might not be the fact. Right? A living conditioned soul is subject to illusion. Illusion means what? That which is not. You accept something which is not as factual, because there could be a lot of explanations for the same thing. What else? It's a tedious process. Yes, it is. It definitely is. But let's talk about what defects of the conditioned soul come in the way of our inductive knowledge. What are the defects does the conditioned soul have? Commit mistakes. Right? It is, we ourselves have seen, under certain situations, certain these things, all of us commit mistakes. Right? Sometimes, we act based on this, oh, this is true like this, and then suddenly we realize, oh, I did a big mistake right in the beginning, and then you have to redo the entire process. And what else? We have a tendency to cheat. Right? We know that you can't really know what is going on over there in the kitchen, and you have a certain story that fits with what you want to happen, and then you will convince everybody that that's exactly what is happening, because we want to cheat. There is some ulterior motive that people have. It happens all the time. Happens all the time. There have been many cases. You see this in criminal investigations, right? They find somebody to be guilty, and they put them behind bars. And then after a long, long time, suddenly, like with new advancements in technology like DNA and all that, 30 years later, there have been actual cases. 30 years a person has been imprisoned, and they find out he is innocent. The DNA was not that person, it belongs to somebody else. Right? And the people who are, who convicting them, they may not have been trying to cheat or something, they may not have specific ulterior motives, but there can be illusion, they could commit mistakes, so many things can happen. Right? In fact, even modern thinking, there are discussions of the problems of inductive knowledge. Even, by modern standards, when somebody does a PhD and all that, they're actually thought some of these problems so that you can, you can set up ways to factor for that. But it's not easy, right? They usually talk about like 6 problems of inductive knowledge. Even if you don't want to cheat, even if you are, you're systematically, you want to find the truth, right? We have taken that out, right? Now your tendency to commit mistakes and to be an illusion come in many different ways, right? For example, see, you cannot really give absolute causation to 2 events happening. I'll give an example, then it's easier to understand. So, every time there is a fire, right, what happens? Especially in this country, there's a fire, what happens? Fire alarm comes and a fire engine comes over there, right? So every time there's a fire engine. Now, the 2 things are happening together. Can you say the fire engine is the cause of the fire? Because every time there's a fire engine. Or the fire is the cause of the fire engine. Because of the fire, the fire engine comes. There are multiple steps. It's not as simple as that. There are so many things involved in the process. Just because 2 events are happening together, we can't just say that's the cause of it. You can't fix causation just because 2 events are happening together. It's very difficult. And so, that limits our ability, to be able to perceive things. We should understand that we are very limited in our ability to see things and come up with cause and effect. But we are so puffed up with our intelligence. Oh, I can do this. Everything in this world I will know through observation. Everything else is false, right? Second problem is that induction can give probable results but not absolute results. Meaning, we can say that we can say something is not false by observed facts, but we can't absolutely say something is true. We can say it's not false because I've observed this and this, so these things are not false. But what is true? You really don't know, right? For example, they used to say, all these people, biologists, naturalists, they say all swans are white, right? The species of swans that are there all over the world, they're all white. They say swans are white. And then, after many, many, many years of saying swans are white, you read any book, you'll say swans, they're white in color. They're like this, this is how you identify a species of a swan. In Australia, they found black swans for the first time. And everything else, if you do species, it's exactly a swan. Instead of being white, it is black in color. Right? So, just because you are not seen a black swan, you can't just say all swans are white. Someday, somebody will see a black swan, and then you'll say, oops, sorry, it is not white. Right? They can also be black. So there are limits to our knowledge like this. You can't just always assume that. You can only say because I'm observing these facts, this particular thing is not false. Swans are not. It's not false statement that swans are white because I'm seeing white swans, so it's not a false statement that swans are white. But I can't really make an absolute statement on what is the color of a swan. Right? This is another defect that we come across when we this thing. I remember when we were all, I think most of us are similar age. When I was a small child, the school days, right? There was talk about how the moon is dry and just rocks and nothing else, right? I remember when I was first reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Like Srila Prabhupada many times talks about how the moon is very soothing, right? And then Prabhupada said it's a very cold place, there's ice over there, right? And that's why the rays coming from the moon are so soothing and cool. Right? And so the Shastras say this, but all the scientists are saying that place, nothing is there, right? It's all just mud. Only a few years later, right, they were able to do experiments and suddenly found that, there is a huge amount of ice sitting on the moon, right? They actually sent a satellite to go and bombard certain areas of the moon, and then ice came out. And they were able to record shrapnel of ice coming out of the moon. Oh, said, oops, sorry. Moon has ice in it. So like this, things keep changing when you're depending on inductive understanding. See, another important thing is that things that we perceive, everything that we perceive is affected by what is socially acceptable at a given time and what is, what the world thinks is acceptable at a particular given time, by a particular big group, right? Our perceptions are colored by that. All you have to do is look at history, then we'll see, how historically things have changed so much. For example, even 50 years, about 50 to 60 years ago, if you go back, if a child is born out of marriage, the laws clearly said that child cannot inherit property. It was in the law. It's not like, somebody had to make that up. So children born out of wedlock have no right to property of the father. Right? It was a law. But things have changed so much now that today in America, 40% of children are born out of wedlock. 40%. That's the latest statistics from CDC. And, it is socially acceptable. Like, we don't perceive children born out of wedlock as, these are, in the olden days, 50, 60 years ago, somebody is born out of wedlock, they are considered, this is a taboo, right? It was considered to be a wrong thing, and they couldn't even inherit property, and they were always looked down upon. But because the society has changed so much, it's very normal, if you go to our small children, like they go to school and all that, they're asking who's your father, who's your mother, like finding out. They get used to the fact that children, I don't have a father, I only have a mother. Right? It's a common, acceptable thing. There's nothing unusual about it. What was very unusual 50 years ago, not acceptable. The society evolves the perception. On the other side of it, like back when, during Prabhupada's times, what year is Prabhupada married? I think it was 14 years old, right? I think it was like 14 years old Prabhupada was married. Mahatma Gandhi was married at 13 years old. I think his wife at that time was 11 years old. It's not like an unusual thing or something. That was the normal age at which people got married. It was 13 years old, 14 years old. It was like normal age. People got married at that time. We go and look, not just here in our country, it was in Europe and all that also as well. That was, there were many, young age was very common. Right? Today, in today's modern society, that would be considered as abuse. Right? They'll put you behind jail. Right? And the same society, what was totally, completely acceptable is now it's completely different. Right? So if we try to use our thinking, this is what people say, everybody accepts, and this is how we understand God, imagine, how many mistakes could be possible. Like what version of understanding and truth that we have, it's very limiting. And there is a fourth thing. It happens a lot. Sometimes you say, it is so obvious, can't you see? Right? Something may be obvious to you, but it may not be obvious to others. Right? Most of our relationships fights happen because of this. Because it's so obvious to you, you assume that it must be obvious to others and say, how can you say you didn't know or you didn't see? It is so obvious. Right? And we make the statement, and because of that, we make some conclusions that this person must have intentionally done this. Why? Well, it's so obvious. But the reality is, what is obvious to you may not be obvious to somebody else. It may even be simple thing as understanding. It's intellectual, cognitive ability. If a person doesn't have experience, person has not seen before, person has this, what is obvious to you may not be obvious. In many cases, it is not really cognitive difference or something. It is about what is on your mind. If you are so much worried about something, you are so much thinking about something, and obvious things are not obviously visible to you. Right? We are only, in fact, they have done experiments of what a person sees. Right? And they show that when a person is looking, especially when you're driving, right? The person's vision is a small circle like this. You can see this whole area, but your ability to react is only a small circle like this. Like you're looking like this. If anything is in this area, you know. If anything is outside that area, you can't even see. Even though you're seeing, you can't see. Why? Because so many other things are going on in your mind and you can't. If you want to, and suddenly you woke up and said, no, look here, then you can see. But normally you're only seeing this. Imagine, if your whole life you're doing like this, and you form opinions based on that, you form these things based on that, and you expect the world to behave like that. That is the problem. We think that the absolute truth has to fit into our limitations. Right? That's a problem. The another problem is sometimes our observations are based on what we want to perceive. Right? We have developed an understanding of something, we have deep conviction on something, and we only want to perceive something. We will only perceive what we want to perceive. Right? This is a common problem. And there was an experiment done back almost 40, 50 years ago. The experiment was, how these card games, right? People play these games. So in that card, there are only, I don't know the rules of it, but something like the spades can't be in red color. They only have to be in black color or something. Right? Like red can be diamonds or something. So what they would do is, they would gather a bunch of people and keep showing them cards like this. And saying, okay, is anything, tell me something about this card. When you do it fast enough, nobody would notice defective cards. Nobody. Everybody will say, oh, that's a spade. There's a 4 of spades. Even though it is red in color, and a spade cannot be red in color, they'll say, no, it's a 4 of spades. No issue at all, because we expect to perceive a black colored spade of 4. Even though it's red in color, we say it is spade of 4. Then when they slowed it down, see, because people also, if you keep showing them again and again, they'll think, why are they showing it to me? There must be something here. And they slow it, and slowly they show it. When they slow down the speed and show it, up to 75% of the people found the mistakes. The rest of the 25 never find the mistake. You just slow them like this for 10 minutes also, they'll never find the mistake. 25% of the people, not some 1%, 2%. A quarter of the people, they have They said, I want to see this. They will only see that. See, this is something we should all know, because this is how our mind works. We take all of this for granted. We'll hear this, yeah, good, but I am not subject to all of that. See, this happens even more so in relationships. If you perceive somebody to be critical, right? You say, oh, this person doesn't like me. You have that perception. This person hates me. Right? He's my enemy. You have that perception. Whatever that person does, whatever that person sees, whatever he says, you will see it as critical. Even though if somebody is like, he's praising you, like actually, genuinely, right? Anybody can make out. But no, you are seeing it as, you will find some reason for it to be critical. We only observe, right, what we want to perceive. And these can be serious problems in both for understanding spiritual knowledge as well as for our relationships and behavior among Vaishnavas. There was some other experiments done. A teacher is told, hey, in your class, he is a good student, here is a bad student, he is like this. And then when they do the experiment, even though the student is a brilliant student, they say that he's a bad student, they'll say, oh yeah, that kid doesn't know. Because your perception like that and objective facts get wiped out. In fact, there was back in the 80s and 90s, there was something called regressive psychoanalysis. When people are going through crisis, they're in depression, they're in this, and they're going through some psychological things. They used to use this method of, I will tell me when you're a child, tell me when you're that, and all that. And they will use that. This is psychologists doing it, and not some the PhD psychologists who trained as psychologists. They would go and analyze to help them. Right? And they will say, childhood, tell me about this, tell me about that. And then they'll say, oh, I found the reason for your problem. You were abused when you were a child, that's why you're behaving like this. And somebody did an analysis of many cases, many years, very recently. They analyzed cases of 80s and 90s. And they actually found that a significant portion of this psychoanalysis and regression analysis were all just bogus. A human brain, memories are not really that strong. You don't really remember much. You can be made to think that you remember whatever you want. See, these people were never abused in their childhood. They were never. Only this person was asked, the psychologist was thinking, I'm seeing this behavior, most likely he must have been abused when they were a child. Let me ask them questions like, when you were a child, did you experience anything like this? And you keep asking the question week after week for 4 or 5 weeks. Then their brains started assuming that they were abused. They're like, yeah, I remember. This happened. These are documented cases. Not one, not two, hundreds of them. They stopped using that as a technique. Because it was false positive, they said. They were all, majority of them are wrong. We can't even remember. We make our own version of our memories. I have seen this in many people. They'll make their version of their memory and they'll say, no, this was the reason this happened. Back then this is why I did this. You convince yourself, there's a story that you build for yourself and you'll stick to that story. It did not even happen. It never happened. It was never a reality. And if you had a way to go back, you'll see that it never really happened. But we get stuck in that reality, our own illusion reality that we create for ourselves. Right? And then the last one, they say, when the evidence does not present a particular interpretation. Right? For example, I was telling about the criminal investigations, right? The evidence is all there. And what do you have to do? What does a prosecutor have to do in court? He has to take the evidence and make a story out of it. Saying this is what happened. This day they went there. He did this. And here is the evidence for this. Here is the evidence for that. This, that, and they convict him. Right? And then as I told you, they find out later, 20, 30 years later, this person was not even there. He did not even go to that place. The evidence was somebody else's DNA. And they proved beyond reasonable doubt. Imagine in a court, it's not about saying that I have some doubt that this person did this. You have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, and you have to convince the jury. 10, 12 people have to be convinced. The judge has to be convinced that this actually happened. And they get convinced because the prosecutor is a very nice storyteller. He makes a nice convincing story about this. So like this, we should not be so puffed up with our ability to perceive things and make our own conclusions. See, sometimes we say, oh no, I am a devotee. No, I have full faith in Prabhupada. I have full faith in the Shastras. I only believe in that. And then, but the reality is internally when we go and, deeply observe ourselves, we create our own version of the Shastras. Otherwise they say, right, matam na binnam. Right? Why do, when Prabhupada used to say, if two Brahmanas get together, they will not agree on anything. Right? Prabhupada said many places. Why is that? It's not that this person wants to cheat and that person or this, or they have this thing. No, the fact is like that. It is, we can fall into many of these own traps in spiritual life, and if you try to rely on your ability to perceive even spiritual subject matters, even based on the Shastras. That is the reason we have this disciplic succession, and we have this concept of an authority structure. Somebody is above you, and then you try to hear from that perspective of how do I see the reality I'm seeing around me from the true Shastric perspective. And many devotees, this is a way that Maya catches devotees, after a few years. Initially, we are all very, very steadfast, right? Isn't that how we begin? Whatever said in the books, we absolutely believe that. Whatever authority, we absolutely believe it. And then slowly, after some time, this thing, doubts start creeping in your mind. Is this really true? Could there be other explanation for this? Could there be this? Could there be that? And then that's a way that Maya can take over our mainly our time, and then we stop really making progress because we don't strictly follow what is given in the Shastras. Right? Ata Shri Krishna namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyehi. Right? Sevon mikehi jikhvadav swayam eva spurati adaha. In the Bhagavatam it is said, Ata Shri Krishna namadi, Krishna nama and others nama adi, na bhaved grahyam indriyehi. Grahya means grasp. Na bhaved grahyam indriyehi. By our senses, we cannot grasp Krishna nama adi. Sevon mukehi jikhvadav. Only by seva, by service, jikhvadav, beginning with the tongue. Right? Sevon mukehi jikhvadav. Swayam eva spurati adaha. The Lord reveals Himself to you. So the only way for us to understand truly, correctly spiritual knowledge is for the Lord to reveal Himself to us. And that can happen only when we do service. That is why, when we talk about what is essential elements of our spiritual life, it's not just reading, it's not just chanting. Obviously we should do that. Like Prabhupada said, first thing is we should chant 16 rounds, follow the regulative principles, should read. But equally important is we need to do seva. If we do not engage a significant portion of our day, a significant portion of our week in doing service, unconditional service to the Supreme Lord, Then, Nato Natya Dara. Right? Like an actor. Acting is right in front of you, they are there, but you can't see. There is a, you can't see. There's Lakshay, you can't see. Right? Why? Because there is a Maya. Chavanika Channam. There's a curtain of Maya that's covering you. And that curtain can only be opened up by serving the spiritual master. Sevon Mukehi Jikhwada. So that is why we keep stressing. It is very, very important to have that service attitude. Any single slightest opportunity we get to do service, we should take it up. Why? Because it is taking you one step closer to understanding the world as it is. One step closer to being revealed, Krishna being revealed to us. Right? It is not by our own intelligence, my own reading of the Shastras, I'll understand this. You may know the words, you may repeat the slokas, but you will never know the true meaning of those words ever if you don't do service and you're not blessed by the mercy of a spiritual master and Balaram, Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna. Okay? So we'll stop here. Anybody has any quick questions or comments? Everything is very clear? Okay, we'll stop here. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Shri Prabhupada ki, Bol Premanande.